Is he one of the scariest men to ever grace the UFC octagon? The Dutch Alistair Overeem is perhaps one of the most notorious kickboxers to ever grace the UFC with his presence. Despite his start in kickboxing primarily under the banner of K1, the Reem made his name truly within the martial arts world. The Reem's undeniable power would translate perfectly into the MMA scene. He knew that it would be a challenge, however, he now has more than 60 pro bouts under his belt. Overeem's first high-profile fight would come against Chuck Liddell, where they would do a Pride and UFC collaboration. With Dana White in the crowd, a very young Alistair would have a tough challenge in front of him. Almost immediately, Alistair landed an overhand followed by a check hook with the lead hand, forcing the Iceman to shoot for a double leg. Overeem's potent knees and quick kicks cut Liddell, something that even Dana White was aware of. It was evident that when on the ground, Liddell had the upper hand as he landed the then legal knees to the grounded opponent. Aljamain Sterling is lucky he didn't fight during this time.
Maybe a little more favoring the ground as he is getting the knees here.
Yes, for sure. This is a real good position for Chuck. North side position.
You can see the blood.
When back on the feet, it seemed Overeem could do no wrong, landing strong knees to the body and crisp punches.
The two now back toe-to-toe, if you will. There's a knee to the body, another knee. A counter with the right hook by Chuck Liddell.
Oh, and another left.
Who looked to be...
Unfortunately for Alistair, he had gassed himself out, leading Liddell to find the first round finish and to get the W for the UFC.
A little rock there too.
Two rights,
and
straight.
Two rights, three rights, and a knee.
This could be the end of the
definitely hurt. Liddell now.
Despite the tough defeat to Liddell, Overeem left with his head held high. It was a solid performance against arguably one of the best during that time. The Demolition Man's next big performance would be against another legendary steroid user in Vitor Belfort. Immediately, we saw a more cautious Reem as he knew about the potential takedown threat from Belfort. Overeem surprised everyone by taking down Belfort, as the Reem was considered primarily a striker.
Whoa, very nice, good. He's listening very good to his instructor, Martijn de Jong. Martijn de Jong was screaming.
At the end of round one, Overeem smelt blood and ran down some vicious ground strikes on Vitor. Belfort, already hurt, shot for a takedown before getting caught by a terrific guillotine.
Good kill, and he taps out! Vitor Belfort is forced to...
This time, Pride would take the win over the UFC. Overeem would later become a champion for the Strikeforce banner, tormenting through fighters in front of him. When Overeem faced rising promise Brett Rogers, Rogers had only lost to Fedor Emelianenko. The Reem had the aura of a champion with him, and he'd prove why inside the cage. Some believed Alistair's success would be halted by Rogers, but we'd soon find out if that was truly the case. Overeem essentially froze Rogers inside the octagon, almost as if he was scared to throw any strikes.
Huh?
On the ground, the Demolition Man let Rogers have it, landing some of the most vicious ground and pound you have ever seen in your entire life.
Into the cage. Oh, watch the no. These hooks are landing for Overeem. Oh, a lot of time. Rogers in trouble. Rogers not answering. Overeem the champion. Let it fly now. Alistair Overeem.
Following this dominant showing, Overeem would move on to put on some suspicious weight and continue on winning. Perhaps the development of Ubereem was happening with our own eyes. His last bout before signing with the UFC would see Overeem avenge his loss earlier on in his career to Fabricio Werdum. Werdum had defeated the Reem back in 2006, and this bout almost 5 years later would allow Ubereem to get his revenge. Tension was up in the air, as this would also determine the victor of the Strikeforce Grand Prix. Werdum's strategy was quite simple, as he wished to take the fight to the floor. Overeem would hit Werdum with big shots, and the Brazilian would invite Overeem in a Charles Oliveira fashion, only for the Dutchman to be the wiser. Evidently, Overeem had all the tools to win standing up, whilst Werdum was being unsuccessful taking him to the canvas. At this point, it was quite obvious how much of a power discrepancy Overeem had over the poor Werdum. The Demolition Man would successfully buy his ticket into the UFC, creating what was one of the biggest fights within the organization. In the early 2000s, Brock Lesnar was the face of the WWE. Lesnar had already made the transition into the UFC and wanted to introduce the Reem into the octagon. Both men showed up clearly on the sauce and provided us with one of the most intense face-offs. Even Joe Rogan pointed out that there was surely something not so natural about this matchup.
How about Alistair Overeem when he fought Brock Lesnar? Fuck 2002.
Yeah.
How about when we saw the Reem when he was Ubereem? When he was Ubereem, when he fought Brock Lesnar, Jesus fucking Christ.
Goddamn comic book hero.
Yeah,
Overeem would now face what was arguably his strongest opponent to date. The intensity was in the air for this bout, as the winner was promised a fight against champion Junior Dos Santos. In a little less than 3 minutes, Overeem would land a barrage of punches and a vicious kick to put out Brock Lesnar.
Our main event of the evening. Brock looking for the uppercut.
Another knee. Big punch.
And he got Brock to the left hand.
He's hurt. Brock is hurt.
The
Kick to the body.
Of course, Mario Yamasaki allowed Lesnar to take some unanswered shots, but at the end of the day, there was no recovery possible for this amount of devastating damage. At this moment in time, it was one of the biggest wins for Alistair. Unfortunately, this is where Overeem would be caught in some controversy, as he'd test positive for elevated levels of testosterone. This would be quite the wet blanket for Overeem's UFC run. However, it wouldn't be the end of it. Overeem had an up-and-down UFC stint, but was now aiming for a second run at gold following his suspensions. The Reem knew that getting past a former champion in Junior Dos Santos would take him quite a far way. Ubereem would then land one of the most beautiful left hooks known to mankind, sending JDS to sleep. Overeem would now face Arlovski in his home country of the Netherlands. He was optimistic and in high spirits being in front of his home crowd. The tension was high, as we knew that with a strong showing here, Overeem would finally get a shot at the belt. Arlovski was quite respectful of Alistair's power, but he knew that he had a chance. And that was quite true up until the moment Overeem went Karate Kid on Arlovski and landed a vicious front kick, followed by concussive punches both standing and on the ground. The kick was a thing of beauty, and obviously, Overeem had made a statement. He wanted Stipe Miocic. Miocic is now considered one of the heavyweight greats, and this fight with Alistair would prove that. Overeem was close to finishing Stipe as he landed a vicious left cross to sit down the champion.
Running.
Oh my goodness!
He got the guillotine.
Can he finish it right here, right now?
Unfortunately, Miocic would recover and would be the one to finish Overeem, ending the title dreams there.
Alistair's just winging these weird, crazy punches. Stipe on top.
Mike postured up.
Despite this heartbreaking loss, Overeem would still provide us with some great moments thereafter. Sleeping Mark Hunt with a vicious knee to the head surely makes our list of great memories from the Ubereem. Or even perhaps being the only man to ever beat Sergey Pavlovich in MMA. Overeem still fights till this day in kickboxing and continues to provide us with highlights. As always, please do not forget to give us a like, subscribe to our channel, and turn on your post notifications.